David, when you guys have a season like you did last year and you go through the evaluation process, what one or two things do you sit back and say, okay, maybe philosophically I need to change my view on that in particular?
Yeah, so I think as you look back on any season, you try to learn something from it, and certainly it's perhaps easier to learn things when seasons don't go the way you had anticipated or the way you expected or hoped. And I think as we looked back on this year, there were a couple things that we didn't do well enough that we're going to have to do better going forward, and that will change some of how we build our teams. And look, we talked about during the season, we didn't get enough innings from our starting pitching. That was clear. And I think a lot of times we look at the overall starting pitching quality, and the quality can be okay, but if we are getting the 3 2/3 start or the 2 1/3 inning start, it can really have a pretty significant chaining effect on your team for the next week, and it can take you a while to dig out of it. So I do think we are cognizant that whether it's through internal players or external acquisitions, we've got to get more innings out of our starters consistently.
How do you view that starting staff right now? Because all the focus seems to be on the young players, and understandably so, but you have guys in Manaea and Peterson and Senga who are not that far removed from pretty elite years, and you've got at times elite contributions from at least a couple of them last season. So when you're looking for more innings, more consistency, how do you view guys like that in particular?
So that's the balance here, and we have to make sure that people we potentially are bringing in from the outside are not displacing players who have pretty significant upside that we already have internally. So look, Sean Manaea is a year removed from being one of the best stars in the National League. Kodai Senga, through the first couple of months before he got hurt last year, was one of the best stars in the National League. Klay Holmes, in his first year starting in a long time, had a really good year and is poised to be even better next year. David Peterson has shown through segments of his major league career that he can get on rolls and be that guy that gives you 7 innings every time out. And then you combine that with what we think are really, really talented young starters, and there is a bar we're going to have to clear to bring someone in to displace one of those guys.
You mentioned Klay Holmes, and it was incredibly impressive what he was able to do last year. Is there any scenario where you could see him filling a need in the bullpen to start the year, or is he going into the season just trying to build off of what he did last year?
Yeah, that's not a conversation we've had to this point. I think right now we're committed to him continuing to build off what he did as a starter. He put a really good base of innings under him this past year for the first year of transitioning, and we think he can build off of that and provide us even more innings. So right now we are looking at him as a starter. He's training as a starter, and I think he's excited to do that for the second year in a row.
When you are looking at the outfield now, obviously you've gotten rid of Brandon Nimmo, so really looking at center field and left field. Are you interested in guys that would be on long-term deals in those two positions, or with the glut of young players coming up, would you like shorter term so that you can give those kids an opportunity?
Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to completely close the door on anything. I think we have to evaluate all potential options that are out there. We talked about it at the time where we made the difficult decision to trade Brandon. One of the reasons we did it is because we have this incoming talent of young outfielders that we think can really contribute for us, not only this year, but for years to come. And so it would have to be a very unique situation for us to bring in someone who is going to block that group of young players for a long time.
I know you've been very open about your desire to bring Pete Alonso back, and I know that you don't talk about specific players and conversations, but when you have a scenario like this where you saw last year the Alonso conversation go months and months and months, there are also some guys that could fill that void right now on the free agent market. How do you balance wanting one player while monitoring and not losing potentially others that could fill that spot?
Yeah, I think it is a balance, and it's trying to stay in contact with everyone involved and understanding how different markets are going to play out. And with Pete, it's also a recognition that he can fit on the team in multiple ways. Mm-hmm. You know, we've talked about his calling card is his bat, and so we can get his bat into a lineup in multiple ways. And so I'm not sure it necessarily takes us out of pursuits that may be more timely than as Pete's market develops.
All right, David, appreciate the time as always.
Thanks, Steve.